Star Citizen Live, the AI Roundtable Q&A, starring Jared Huckabee and members of the AI content feature and tech teams. Yay! Hey, everybody.
Woo.
Welcome to Star Citizen Live, AI Roundtable Q&A. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. Welcome to my home in beautiful, sunny Manchester, United Kingdom. I say that and people think I'm like, oh, yeah, no, that's sunlight. I am lit by only sunlight right now. It's actually, I've been here for 27, 28 days now, and it's only rained 2 of the days we're here. Everybody was worrying me about the weather here, and it's actually been really nice. So I'm going to say that now, and then it's going to be a week of storming. Joining us on the show this week, members of our esteemed AI content tech and feature teams. We've got Marius.
I'm Marius. So I'm a lead programmer. I'm for a long period here with in the Frankfurt studios. I think it's more than around 6 years. Nowadays, I'm taking care of planetary navigation tech. So basically generating navigation mesh at runtime around players, vehicles. This tech is kind of close. My next priority is getting into the work for the navigation links. And a bit of to explaining what navigation link it's about NPC being able to use airlocks, ledge grabs, ladders, transit like elevators, and also metro station, all that. So yeah, this is what's going next.
Now let's not undersell that planetary nav mesh. That is a huge addition to Star Citizen. That is what's going to allow us to put AI out at all of these outposts and points of interest, so that when players go and explore these down wrecks and everything, they're no longer just gonna find an empty, abandoned location. AI can, once we get this planetary nav mission, AI is going to be at the derelicts, the outposts, the caves, wherever. It's an exciting foundational tech.
Exactly.
I just want your mom to be proud of you when she watches this.
Thank you.
We are proud of you, Marius, as well.
Andrew, who are you?
Hello.
What do you do for Star Citizen?
Hello, my name's Andrew Davis. I'm the product owner of the AI feature team, and that's a very kind of grand title. For basically what that means is I take all of the crazy mad designs of our designers and all of the other requirements of the other teams, and then I parcel it up and turn it into a reality with lots of very boring planning meetings, but really at the end of the day, what I'm doing is taking their kind of dreams and turning them to little bits of work and passing them on to our really talented programmers and animators, and making those work, hopefully. And I also senior developer, and I've been working on getting our chow line AI up to scratch. And this is something I worked on before, but it's kind of lapsed a little bit, but we're kind of getting it running again, so I can pass it along to the content team. And the chow line is a system that is a bit of a social AI that allows our guys to go and grab a tray from the mess hall, grab some crockery, and then go and use lots of different machines that each produce bits of food and drink, and then go and sit down at tables and eat them and drink them and do that to their heart's content. And it's a system that required lots of little different bits working in a way that if I'd worked on a previous game, you probably have that all done in one canned animation. But because this is Star Citizen and we like to make things we like to go that extra level with lots of detail, each of these machines is a separate thing. And that means there's lots of places where things can go wrong, like you don't get the crockery that you want, or something else. Or let's say there's whilst you're getting your food, suddenly there's an alert over the tannoy, and all of those characters have to drop what they're doing and leave their plates and trays and go off and man their battle stations. So it's dealing with all of those things, like how do you come back to that and deal with that. So that's kind of taking lots of stuff that we've already worked on and then putting it all together to create a really complex system, and with all the complexities, all the bugs that come with that. So that's basically what I do.
And a lot of your focus these days is on Squadron 42, but much of that work will make its way into the PU once it's been proven out and stuff. So yeah. Fran, no stranger to Star Citizen Live. Who are you and what do you do?
So I'm Francesco Roccucci, and I'm the AI director of the teams. So the AI team, mostly my responsibility is overview all the implementation, technical implementation of all the elements of the AI. So making sure they're implemented correctly, that they're up to the standard, working with design to look at the logic, or with design and animators to look at features that they need, how do we make them, and then making sure that they're dispatched to the right person. Or some stuff I do it myself because I really like it. So of course, there are things that I've been working on recently, like the dynamic conversation that I hope Dan will go on, soon. It's something that will add a lot of life to a lot of the behaviors we're working on. But there are stuff like I support a bit of the different features in general, like the usable refactor we want to do that are like improvements, especially on the tool side and how we debug stuff and how efficiently we are creating things. Want to make it much more efficient, and then a bit of navigation stuff with Mars. I try to support whenever I can, different parts.
That conversation stuff is cool. We actually showed it recently on a Star Citizen Live. I think everybody who's ever played a video game has had those moments when the cutscene isn't fully rendered, when the cutscene isn't pre-rendered, when it's actually being rendered live in the thing, which is always needs appreciated. And you're trying to talk to somebody, and then somebody's big ass head comes in front of you, and it's just like, rah, rah, as they're trying to get around you while you're talking. You're like, Christ Almighty, let's go. It's like that. So it's little things like that. Little things like that build up and make the immersive universe that we're trying to get to.
Yeah, one thing that we really were working on, which was really something like this, like making sure that when people are in conversation, they create some area of avoidance, right, to avoid those sort of things, and all this polishing that to achieve the great quality we want.
All right, Stuart, first time on Stars in Live. Who are you and what do you do?
Hello, I'm Stuart Charlton. I'm an animator here at Cloud Imperium, and on Star Citizen, what I do is try and create life through NPCs, basically. Bring characters into the environments, into the universe, and get them to do performances that just add that extra sense of immersion. So I would say characters, but there's a lot of NPCs. Mm-hmm. So basically adding life. That's a short-ish way to explain it.
Some folks might not understand why an animator is on an AI team. It would seem isn't there an animation team? Why are there animators on AI teams?
One reason is because one thing that I work on a lot as well is these things called usables, and a usable is a thing that somebody can interact with, like a coffee machine. So I'll go out there and do the research on how to use a coffee machine and put together sort of like a flow. Luckily, I drink coffee a lot, just using that as an example. But I'll go out and videotape myself using my coffee machine and put it together as what people would call like a state machine, mm-hmm. or some people may refer to as a flow graph. And it would basically explain a flow of how to use that usable, the coffee machine. And by doing that, we maintain like a sense of realism, performance, and just adding more to that expanding universe.
An AI that can knows when to trigger what animation when based on what it's trying to do.
Yeah, for example, bartender, knowing how to make a highball, or knowing how to make how to get a smalls glass, knowing how to make all the different drinks. So yeah, all of those different things. They all require different performances, and so I'm in charge of making sure that performance is authentic.
Gotcha, and that's why animation is such an important aspect of AI work. Yeah, you had something. Yeah, I think you said you had something you wanted to show us real quick before we jump into questions and stuff like that.
One example of what I do is actually go around the universe through these like awesome environments that people have put together, and I pose characters that are sort of interacting with different usables, and then I speak to our animation director Steve Bender and request for mocap shoots to be done. And I also talk to Fran and Dan and multiple designers about how we can actually get this to work. And something that's also been brought up in some chats lately are commuters on just train stations and things like that. So I thought I might show some of the poses and then the shoots. There's some work in progress. And drumming is obviously what I like as well, so I've got to put that in. But this is something that I'm really interested in adding, which is some characters with different kinds of postures, things like that.
Okay.
So
and,
yeah.
And this is recent stuff. This was just done a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I believe it was done Tuesday.
Oh,
yeah.
All right.
It's super fresh.
Super fresh.
So,
that last one where he fell asleep, that wasn't actually, you didn't ask for that. He just, he'd overworked him so hard that he just fell asleep.
Turned on the equipment.
Folks who have read the letter from the chairman that came out just this week, in the section about the studio and the new studios that we're building, there was a small blurb about a brand new 4,500 square foot performance capture stage that's being put together right across the walkway from our new office. It's our new office in the UK is a campus. It's part of a campus. We have the top 3 floors of the Manchester Goods Yard building, which is the one that you see in ISC hosting and everything. And we're going to go inside. We're going to go inside starting next week. And then you could throw a rock and hit it, like right next door across the walkway. There's another building with it where we're building this giant performance capture stage, where we'll be able to do pickups like we just did, like Stuart just showed you for just anytime we need to add more NPCs into places and make the place feel more alive, to do pickups for Squadron 42, things that we realize, we need a bridge for this or that or whatever, or even when it comes time to it, production for additional sequels and stuff for Squadron 42 and stuff like that. So
I recently got to actually see it as it's being built, and it is so exciting. Yeah, it's huge.
And there's actually a picture of it on the letter for the chairman. When it mentions it, there's a link. If you click the link, you'll see a big picture of it in its current state. And then there's a third building, kind of catty corner. It's weird. It's like an L, and that's where my new stage is going to be. Where we'll be doing these shows live and in person and stuff like that. When the time
do you have
comes.
to wear the motion capture suit for that as well?
No, we're finally, for the first time in the 8 years I've been here, we're actually going to have like a proper set. So they've
That's gotta be
I've
fun.
paid my dues. I've paid my dues and enough with shelves that I've stolen from other places in the building, but put my own personal stuff.
But will you have a nice window with the sunlight coming into the room like you have right now?
That would be spoilers. That would be spoilers. It's gonna have a window. We'll leave it at that.
That's cool.
Dan, last but certainly not least, who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
Hello, I'm Dan Baker. I'm a senior designer on the AI content team. And as a designer, basically, we're kind of the guys that are the glue between all of the other teams. We tend to be the ones that, we'll get a request in, say for something, I don't know, say something simple like a seat, and then we'll go, right, okay, straight to the programmers. This is the thing that we want. Here's the list of requirements. We try and figure out all the requirements that might not have already been thought about, and then leave them to mull over that for a little bit. Might be a meeting or two required for that. And we'll go to the guys like the animators and we'll say, hey, we need these animations of this guy sitting down on a chair. And then we'll go to the artist and we'll say, we need a chair. And we'll just try and pull all of these different things together. And then usually, we'll get all of this content back and we'll try and put it all together. And more often than not, it doesn't work. So we'll go back to the programmers and we'll say it doesn't work. We'll go back to the animators and say it doesn't work. Back to the props artists, so you missed something, so you keep going back and forth all the time, just trying to figure it all out, see where the problems are, and hopefully by the end of it you get something that does eventually work. That's kind of it in a nutshell, really. But I do actually have a demo of one of our more complicated usables, because one of the main things I work on in particular, I mean, I'm, in AI, there's just so many different things that it touches, like I say, like all of the usables that, most of the usables that a player uses, will want NPCs using them. There's a lot of tech involved in AI as well. Like one of the most recent things I've been working on is like AI reactions. So making sure that they're reacting to certain things, so if they're getting shot, need them to react to that. If they're only usable and they get shot, then you need to make sure that there's a system in place to make sure that they react accordingly to that. No. And we're also just starting with the low and the medium type of reactions as well, like listening to a tannoy announcement, things like that, the kinds of things that we want them to be able to be aware of as well. And also, I mean, I could go on forever. It's like things like dynamic conversations and things as well that have already been mentioned in Wildlines. But I do have a demo here of one of our more complicated usables or complex usables. It's so here we have a wall panel, which is essentially this is a full-blown usable, and in here this is what houses the goes in a minute. There we go. So the wall panel is the thing that houses. Okay, he's going to walk off. Typical. It houses the ship components. So things like shield generators, quantum drives, relays, whatever it ends up being. And inside there, you're going to have things like fuses or whatever other kinds of subcomponents that might be relative to that component. And they're going to affect the statistics of the component in some way, most likely just like, if certain fuses were broken, you would probably expect the thing to not work as well as if it had 3 fully functioning fuses. Mm-hmm. So the player is going to be able to, go in here and do whatever they like with the fuses. They could swap it out themselves if they want to. And then, place a new one back if they need. Say that one was broken. Close it. You could open the next one. Same kind of thing.
And this will all play into resource gameplay and engineering and stuff, which we'll be discussing again later this year.
Interestingly, that doesn't want to close. That's a new bug. Typical. So, yeah, the point is, though, that the NPCs, we want them to be able to do all of this kind of stuff as well. So in the future, when you can hire a crew, for example, you'd want them to be able to go up and change these fuses for you, without you having to do it all yourself.
Right.
And while what we've done so far is very Squadron focused, we've also obviously had the PU in mind as well for just making sure that anything that we do will continue to work there as well. So actually, let's just going to reload this real quick.
It's always live.
Doing a live demo.
People. It's always live. We always do live. Like
we need to say that one good thing is that in this case, your behavior Dan would also handle wall panel, already open or in different states, because the players will leave them in the wrong state. So
yeah. So there's logic in that to say, oh, this door's already open. So you could tell the NPC to open the wall panel door, and they'll still check when they get there.
It must be the new people who think we do pre-recorded things, because the people who have been here for 10 years, they have to know by now. We always do live. Warts and all.
I'll be honest, though, I had a significantly worse bug like half an hour before we started the call. Managed to get that fixed, though. So yeah, this is an example of an NPC actually doing something relatively new that we've developed, which is assignments, which is this assignment in particular is it basically just tells this NPC to find this wall panel and just use it forever, because there's going to be plenty of situations where we want in Squadron or wherever we're going to want these NPCs just staying in that place, because we know that as the player's going to walk through there, that it's going to look good if somebody's there. So this is just a behavior now where the NPC is going to just keep going through all of the different actions that they can do on it. So they can do like inspects on the component, they can do inspects on the fuses, takes places. If they got like a flashlight or a data pad, they could use those as well. Because that's another thing as well, so that the NPC is aware of the things that they have on them. So the equipment that they have available to them. So if they have like a flashlight, then they'll use that. If they don't, then they're not going to bother trying to use that action. But one of the really cool things about this is how the fuse itself is a usable, the component is a usable, and the wall panel is a usable as well. So you got like a 3-step hierarchy of usables, and the NPC is still able to search for the fuse, interact with the fuse directly, and understand that it's got the component and the wall panel between it and the fuse, and still act accordingly.
So basically, what you're saying here, so it's like I said, the NPC comes up here, it can recognize that there's a door, it opens the door, it recognizes that there is a giant component inside here, what component it is, what it's supposed to do, and then it recognizes that even within that component there are subcomponents, and they all have particular jobs and purposes, and it can sit there and it can go through and validate each one.
Exactly, yeah. And we can also put tags on the different fuses as well. Say one of the fuses was broken, we can tag that up as like damaged or broken or whatever it might be, and then we can give the engineer a task to say find any broken fuses and then go straight to those ones and replace them with fresh ones.
Or upgrade them to a different thing.
Could be.
And I think like one important thing is that these assignments Dan is talking about are a sort of API, right? So at the same things, I mean, connecting what you were saying about the hiring, right? If you hire an engineer, you might have an API of his behavior, of what he exposes to you. That is the same thing we expose to a level designer or a mission designer, right? It's just that the mission designer might want to loop it forever on something because of visual reasons, but you as a player might just say, can you repair this wall panel, or can you inspect this wall panel to verify that everything is correct? Or maybe you have an alert in your main board computer, and it says, oh, this fuse is broken. Then you can send one of your crew member to repair exactly that fuse. Those are the API that Dan and the other designers can expose from their behaviors. And I think with the custom assignment that we lately implemented, I think there is also these extra things where it doesn't require engineering job to do this type of things. We can really expose better, functionality that people can use.
Now, before we move away from this, Dan, I have to ask you, what's going on with the pipes on the left there? Is that blood?
I think it's paint. It's paint and rust.
Oh.
And you gotta keep better care of your Idris.
Yeah, I think I'll have to make an assignment for cleaning them.
Yep.
You sure it's not the blood pipes coming from the medical bay?
And for those of you who are wondering,
just to see where we are in the ship, but I'm not allowed.
And for those of you who are wondering, yes, that was an Idris. That was an Idris. All right, you can go ahead and stop this share. All right, so that is our setup to transfer over into the Q&A portion of our show here. We wanted to show that and everything. It's a bit about how NPCs work throughout the ships and stuff like this. It's currently being developed, for Squadron 42 primarily. When the systems are all proven out there, like most other Squadron 42 systems, they'll be converted and brought over to the PU. We say this because the number one most voted up question in the thread this week, and by a wide margin, and then repeated at number 4 and repeated at number 8 and repeated at 10 and 15, whatever, was how will hiring NPCs work? We're not going to get into how the hiring of them works because that's actually not an AI test. That's actually a game design task. That's not the team that we have here. But we will talk a little bit about the process of making those NPC crew work and what's going to be involved in them and stuff like that, such as we just showed. So we'll start right off here. What is the development path for hireable NPC crew implementation? Like, what are the design challenges, the prerequisite technologies, the known roadblocks, the gateposts, everything besides just a lot of time? What are we talking about here?
Do you want to start? Okay, I'll start. I think like so some of the stuff I think that Dan just showed, I think it is part of that one, right? I mean, Dan, you'll be involved with a lot of those behaviors, not just the engineer, the deck crew is the same, where we have characters that will take care of your ship, help you to land or repair, try to refuel your ship and stuff like this. So all those behaviors are the basics for, first you need to do those behaviors and then you're gonna hire them to do the behavior, of course. One part is this assignment and the custom assignment work that we were discussing. That is the way in which, let's assume the player hired 3 guys, first of all, right? So it means that they are assigned to you, they're part of your crew. It's that when you take the ship, let's say they are there already, first of all, and then you can give them commands. And the way you can give them commands, in essence, is despite the UI, the player-facing feature, works, it will eventually turn into the request for the assignment to the AI. And the request for an assignment to the AI means that basically we have something that we call mastercraft, that is kind of a same machine on top of the regular activities and sub-activities that Subsumption describes. And this is where the API, the custom assignment, comes into play, right? Because we have a custom assignment activity that just can take whatever task you want them to do as custom as you want, and they will just do it. And then there are things that we want the activities to expose. It's like, I'm not an engineer, but if you ask me to repair something and you hire me, right, and I'm a janitor, I can try. Now, I might not be that good, it might take 3 times longer than what an engineer would take. And possibly I would put a fuse that is also broken because I cannot understand if the fuse is broken or working. But I think we want basically NPCs to be able to perform job, very likely, maybe poorly. And that it might affect their morale, right? Because maybe if you hire somebody as an engineer and you give them janitor duties, then maybe it will have like some morale, going down in respect of the type of task that you give. So all those things are already supported by the systems, right? So some parts are just the way we expose them to the different behaviors, and and then a lot is polishing, right? Because I think people want us to have a good experience on the animation side, making sure, as Dan said, that these usables are set up correctly, props are set up correctly, right? That you have the different type of fuses and stuff like this. And then I think another part, from my perspective, that is important is how this crew is managed by you, right? And how persistence, so the persistence work we are currently working on as a company, right? It will be a fundamental part, because if I hire somebody, server goes down, comes back, well, I should have the same crew that I just paid, and it should be more or less where I left it, right? And trying to do the same things that I left them to do. And then possibly the simulation place, because if I leave, let's say, my engineer to do a repair, and I leave the hangar and they're repairing, or my deck crew, let's say, I say like, can you repair this ship? And then I go with my second crew in a mission. When I come back, it's not because they're not active, then the ship should not be repaired already, right? The time has passed. I expect that to still happen. So those things are more or less the type of challenges and the core functionality that we need, for the full-blown experience, of course. But a lot of the high fidelity, I would say, experience in terms of, abilities of doing those behaviors are quite there. Of course, if the loop is not there, the gameplay loop, let's say repairing, if it's not there, then of course we don't want to fake it on the eye side, right? So we just prepare the stuff that then it will interact with the fuses. What Dan was saying, right now we could tag the fuse to be broken. But once there is the gameplay loop in which, for example, using a lot of a fuse might cause that to break, and then the game code behind the scene already tags it, or maybe there's an L component that we can use. Using that data is trivial for us because all the rest is already there. I think, it's this is basically our process right now. I don't know if anybody wants to add some more.
I guess one of the things that is a big challenge with all of that, and with all of the social AI behaviors that we do, is just knowing, because we've got these very complex systems, just being aware of all the different ways in which things can fail, and then having some good behavior to fall back. As you said, if in that the example, like if the ball panel's already been left open, that you can cope with that, and that's something that other games don't necessarily have to deal with, because they very tightly control the situations in which the AI is working.
For example, one example, sorry, Jared, if I can add just this little thing, what Dan showed, I think is really cool. If as a player, he was going to remove one fuse, the eye interacts with the fuse, so he knows that there is no fuse there. You don't risk the eye will choose to play an animation on the missing fuse because there is just nothing to interact with, right? So I think it is more complex, but then eventually what you get as a repaid of your hard work is the fact that this really works systemically, right? And the way you configure that, as Dan said, if you don't have the flashlight, you just don't use it. You don't play the animation of the flashlight without the flashlight.
And also leads to other behaviors, like I was thinking about in the chow line and the mess hall. If there's loads of people having to go off, or the player leaving loads of trays behind, then there's going to have to be a janitor character who comes in and picks up those trays and takes them back, so we don't get a mess hall that's just full with trays.
And as Dan and Stuart showed, I imagine animation is going to be a major factor in this
Absolutely.
too, because there are metrics. We have metrics, and sure, and many ships follow many of the metrics, but there are always going to be these outliers, and you've got we're nearing 200 ships at this point, so you have to go through and prove all these NPC crew out over every single ship with an interior is going to be a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah, like I was gonna just say as well, like from my perspective, like a lot of the challenges are just with dependencies. So if you have a task that the NPC needs to do, which involves like needing a multi-tool so that they can weld or repair or whatever it is, they need to be able to get a hold of that thing. So they need to have lots of ways of getting a hold of that thing as well, be it a lock or an equipment chest or wherever it ends up being, or even just a multi-tool line on the ground. They need to be aware of like, oh, that thing's over there, I'm going to use that instead. But like you just said about animations as well, we have that all over the place. I mean, one of the things I'm working on right now is the deck crew. And that's NPCs repairing ships like the Gladius. I mean, a lot of what we're doing right now is very Squadron focused so that the player can see these NPCs repairing the ship physically. But if you went into a huge amount of fidelity on every single possible area of the ship, it would just be a colossal amount of animations. And, even just things like, say you have something on top of the Gladius, the NPC needs to be able to get up there. Which means that they need to understand that in order to get up there, I need to grab the ladders, move them over to the Gladius, and then go up the ladder.
The ladders are trolleys, so they need to be able to use the trolleys.
Exactly. They need to be able to push them, move them around, and then when they get up there, you need to make sure that they've got the animations to enter, and it's all the correct metrics, which isn't always the case. So then you've got to go back to the artist and say, this isn't a metric, and usually you have to design a metric first and then get them to change their baby into something that you've written down months or sometimes years later.
Yeah, I think the challenge is also to give them the tools to do this more as efficient as possible, right? Because I think you guys might have also a way to override all of this with custom animations, for example, for each ship, but I think the critical bit is how quick you can do that, right? And I think how quick Stuart can go through in a test map, and this is why we have done like a lot of also work on the custom assignment, because we can use them in the feature test, and we can use them to try to speed up a bit this process, because Stuart needs to be able to go there and say, like, play the going up the ladder animation is like, without spending hours on trying to reproduce it. And the same for Dan.
I don't want to keep making AI crews sound like an absolute nightmare scenario, but we do want to effectively communicate what an initiative, what a endeavor it truly is. To what Dan and Andrew said as well, those resource, the fuses and everything, those are all part of the whole resource management system, and that system has to be developed and proven out and usable by players first, before you then figure out how to expose all that stuff for AIs too. So this is my way of saying it. I don't. We're gonna move on from this topic here because there's a lot of topics we want to do. But it's important to. I want folks to to just be sure that they understand to properly manage expectations. We are shooting for the moon. with this thing, and when it is complete and when it is fully developed, it'll be a thing unlike any other. But
it's also an iterative process, right? So we get, the first step, then you can iterate, you can make it better, you can add that, and more fidelity, the more you can, basically.
But NPC Crew is not a soon thing. It is a after many other things are done.
On this note, sorry to also say one of my points. The idea is that we also try to reuse what we already. So basically, the social AI, we're already going to implement behaviors, activities for repairing, right? When you hire them, you just try to
use the same,
to use the same, only with the input dynamically from the player, because you want to repair your ship, you want to actually work for you, so basically you just give guidance on already existing behaviors that we're already trying to implement, so at least not to duplicate and not to put more work on this.
I think, Jared, now you know that you need to stop us talking because we have like too much stuff that we want to say.
Marius, you're working on the dynamic nav mesh right now. When that's in later this year, it'll allow people to go to these certain POIs. Not every POI. It's up to designers where they're going to use it and everything. But they'll be able to go to certain POIs, certain things that we're going to show here in ISC real soon in the next couple of weeks, and encounter NPCs, friendly, hostile, whatnot. For the hostile ones, how's it going to work? Dynamic isn't the entire planet. That's the whole point of it. It's pockets of the planet where the players are and everything. What's kiting and AI going to be? Are we going to be able to go to a POI and kite somebody all the way back to Lorville or to the main landing zone or something? What are we talking about here as far as scope?
In theory, yes. So we already kind of showed a bit during the CitizenCon, right? The outpost and the NPC go moving around, trying to selling stuff, having combat with you. At that moment, actually, the planetary navigation, it was close to end, but it wasn't finished, so we weren't able to use it. But now we should be able to use the planetary navigation in this kind of similar scenario. And I think mission teams are trying to create some missions around this. And yes, in theory, as I was saying, because we
can say, Mars, we can say that we handed over to design that they're already working with that, because I think that I think is a cool thing that right now they already started using it and they already they can provide us feedback already, right? It's internal development right now, and as Jared said, it's something that people can experience this year at the end of the year.
Yeah, and because you said that if we could actually move with NPC everywhere, even to Lorville from, in theory, yes. So because we generate a navigation mesh only around actors and vehicles, right? And actually, if we go farther away, we also destroy those areas, at least not to keep in memory blocks that are not needed. So yes, you could go around the planet with no problem.
Theoretically.
And in general, theoretically, yes.
If you survive them shooting at you, and yes.
Well, we'll see how it plays out in testing and everything. And there's a reason many games have leashes
of course
on stuff. So it's one of those things.
I think it's very likely that designers usually want them to stay more contained than the actual technology preventing you to not do it. Of course, because it's the experience you want to give. A
realistic character probably won't chase you for 80 miles.
But foot. Because they have been told usually, because I think they will be told to not do it, and then I think eventually what we want to have is the ground vehicles, right? And then they might chase you with vehicles as well through roads.
But that's a wonderful illustration of the difference between a design decision and a tech capability and stuff. The feature, the tech that the team is building. Yes, it's technically possible and whatever. But then it will be
sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes my video around where it's like, no, you're gonna do this by tech, and he's like, but I want that, So it's like
sometimes you have to be the bearers of bad news.
Yeah.
Also, recently in ISC, we've shown the work for AI reinforcements. basically going to one of these places that maybe doesn't have AI until you trigger something, and then they come flying in on ships and stuff. Will AIs bring in large drop ships to unload both humans, or only humans, or humans and potentially ground vehicles?
In theory, yes. At this moment, we are testing only with the actors, with NPCs. Also in general, those are big cargo ships that are part of the reinforcement behaviors, right? To be able to carry, 20 NPCs, right? I'm not even sure if capital ships could land on the planet.
I think anything could land on the planet right now with the tech that we made. But I think the real problem, is only that we, as you said, we're working on the navigation links, right? So some ships have different methods to enter and exits. So it depends on the ships that are the methods that we currently support, that are the one with the backdoor right now. And the one, for example, that have internal elevators, we don't support them yet, or something with the ladders, we don't support them yet. But the one with the back door, if it's a capital ship, then it's fine. If it's set up correctly, of course. But that is just a bare minimum. Like,
this might be more a design decision, but as a follow-up, will the AI reinforcements immediately begin destroying our parked ships, or will they engage players directly first?
I think if it's not good, if the player or the hostile is not actually in the pilot seat,
we'll not try to shoot it. Yeah,
you're not going to attack that ship.
For now. Yeah, I think right now, there's one thing that we don't have a good tactic for them to decide how to destroy a ship. So of course they could shoot with a rifle, but it doesn't really damage much of a ship. Right. And then yes, they would like it. We also want to understand how to expose based on the mission requirements, right? So for example, the guys could be called in not to destroy your ship, but to destroy you or capture you, right? In theory, eventually. So it's like, it depends on the type of information designers wants to be seen, and they would probably search for somebody. It depends also what reinforcement means, because I think you brought up a good point. Is that it could be that you're right to a place where nobody is, and you trigger an alarm, right? That attracts some people they need to go there and check what's going on. But it could also be that there are already people that you engage, and some of them, they manage to require assistance. So they come, and the people who come already have an understanding that something is happening because it's being communicated to them, right? So you want to bring them with a different kind of alertness that is shown to the players, so that they arrive already knowing that something went wrong with their friends, and stuff like this. So we can support those type of things.
It's and then of course we've talked about AI with differing levels of intelligence and personality stuff. Some AI, you want AI who recognize, I don't have weapons to take out a ship, so I'm not going to bother shooting at a ship. And then there's always got to be that one person who's new and not really experienced, and he'll take his little pistol and try to shoot down a cutlass. Let's try it. It's like that's part of building a dynamic and diverse universe. It's you don't want every bot to be perfect.
No, and I think it's also a matter that if it feels real, then it's fine, right? You would expect if you shoot at a guy that is on the ground and he has a pistol, he might shoot some rounds just to because that's what a normal reaction would be, and then he tries to find a cover, or while he looks around and he doesn't know where to find it, still tries to shoot at you, and then he goes and tries to find some defensive area.
That's where our trait system will come in. We're going to have different traits that will be integrated with the combat behaviors and everything. So if you've got a gung-ho character or a cowardly character, then there will be different traits, and they will affect different roles on targets, how they select them, and other things like that.
One other thing about the animations for people with guns is what we get reviewed on a lot is trigger discipline, and that's about how you actually hold the weapon. And Steve Bender will chop you down if you don't understand proper good trigger discipline. And it's awesome.
You make the argument that some AI have to be stupid and have bad trigger discipline.
That's actually the thing. I believe that we had one of the actors who was actually learning about using the weapons, and because they were learning, the performance actually came across as somebody who was learning. So they weren't perfect, and it was, I believe, it was exactly what was
What
wanted.
we needed, yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's awesome.
The
We've
more
definitely got
real it is, the
Yeah.
more real it feels.
We've definitely got some factions that have combat styles which are different. Some are highly trained with their weapons, and some are kind of like amateurs just grabbing their first weapons. So that's definitely something that should come across
Yeah.
with our animation style as well.
Yeah,
How do you know that's how I do, Stuart, with the weapons? So,
without jumping into spoilers, there are multiple factions in Squadron 42 that you'll be squaring off against, and they don't all have the same modus operandi. Let's put it that way.
but even in the Star Citizen universe, I think that the world is so large and vast, right? That I think you will expect that there might be some settlements of people that are less trained, or with some people that are less trained than others.
We're seeing a lot of the Ninetales lately. So this year with dynamic planetary nav mesh, and with AI reinforcements, we're going to see more and more hostile AI around the planets and locations of the persistent universe this year than at any point in Star Citizen's history. Besides just fighting, will AI factions, AI actors start using medical tools? Will AI run around with the med gun and start healing each other?
It's definitely something that we've got planned for well, I know of it as being planned for Squadron 42, that we do want characters to be healing other friendly characters. We also have designs in the works for when you take down people with non-lethal takedowns and you've restrained them, that they're both going to be, if that character's been knocked out, that they'll go and revive them and release them from captivity. That's definitely something that's planned for Squadron 42, I know, in the design. So that should also then come forth into PU as the rest of this stuff does. So yeah, definitely.
How about allowing AI to loot dead players? You may want to go
I think it's similar.
I'm not aware of anything.
So I think in general is connected and to do the stuff that we want to do with the ammo and resource management, as Jared was also mentioning, right? For example, we do have already some work that we put in for investigating dead bodies, right? And like in general, it's like when you would have to search, these all connects, right? So it's like when you need to find ammunitions, for example, you finish your ammunition, what you would do is exactly the same as a bartender would do, right? That you would request the system to give you a usable that can provide you with a specific set of objects, in this case, ammunition for your pistol or your rifle, right? And that could be a body to loot. It could be a crate to loot, right? And that just means that you go to the object, you play the animation that, Stuart and animation team makes, you would look and of course, what you are after for looting, compared to that you really need to go and find. I mean, you could pretend also that you don't know and let the eye sometimes, maybe based on traits, finding somebody that doesn't have anything as well. But in theory, the eye might know where to go and where to loot. So that these type of things is an example where I think a lot of the work that we've done on the social side is not isolation. It's exactly the same things that you need for combat. It's exactly the same thing that you need for pretty much anything. And, it's, and then it uses the routing, as Dan has shown, that is like the ammunition would be some usable inside a usable that is the body of, that you need to loot, for example, or the crate. So when you say pick up, it routes through the right object and then you play the right animation because you carry this extra information with the action, and then it's just a matter of setup, but the behavior is going to be the same. It's like, give me something where I can grab these bullets. Oh, is this usable? Okay, cool. Is this, it can either be a physical bullet that you find on the ground, maybe you find a magazine on the ground, but it could be just that that something belongs to the loadout or the inventory of something.
Well, that actually starts to touch on one of the the relatively new things that we're starting to look at, which is currently NPCs are all knowing, right? They know everything about everything. Like they know if the wall panel at the other end of the ship is in use or not. But what we want to start trying to introduce is the illusion of them not knowing where something is. So like Fran was just saying, like with the ammo, the NPC knows straight away whether that guy's got the right ammo for them or not. But we want them to go and check anyway, you know? And same kind of thing like with something like a vending machine. If an NPC is going to go to a vending machine for something, it might be nice if another one comes up and then they go, oh, it's already in use, I'll just sit back and wait for a minute. And maybe that could even introduce like the chance for them to have some kind of a dynamic conversation as well. So it's just those small steps that we're making towards trying to create this larger, more complex AI behavior.
So
They'll also never know if that vending machine is going to work.
Just torture your AI here. For a little bit in the chat today, there was an interesting conversation about the nature of frustration going on between some members in the Twitch chat, and you know, if that's how they want to spend their time, you know, so be it. But let's play on the nature of frustration and talk about performance issues. Anybody who's played Star Citizen for any amount of time knows that all AI in the game suffer from a number of performance issues. What of that can we fix today? What of that can we work on in the short term? What of that requires waiting for things like, you know, entity streaming and server meshing and anything that improves overall server performance that's drastically out of your hands? I guess let me rephrase this. I guess what is within your control to help and work on to improve performance over time, and what do you just have to sit back being frustrated yourselves and wait for other stuff to come online? Let's talk about what you can do.
So I could start a bit on some ideas on what we are doing. We are working on, we have a lot of performance tasks that we try to tackle and to improve the frame rate for the dedicated server, because on the client is not a big problem. Usually you stream only what is around the player and you render only that. So it's not that costly. On the dedicated server, because we don't have yet the server meshing, if you have 50 players and each of those 50 players are in heavy areas like Lorville, Area 18, New Babbage, with a lot of NPCs, right? It happens that the dedicated server is going to have 5 frame rates per second. And this is going to impact the how fast and you are going to see the decision from the NPC. So yeah, this is one of the biggest problem that we have. And what we do is working on performance task where we can, plus we try to discuss with directors, designers to try to limit the number of entities that we put in the game. So yeah, these are the two things that I could think at this moment.
I think that definitely, sorry, go Stuart.
Yeah. One thing, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, Fran, but when it comes to the performance of the characters that are inside the usables, we do have this sort of thing that we can fall back on, and I believe it's called usable idle, and that's the technical term anyway. But basically, if the animation is having trouble loading, or there's too many NPCs, and then there's just one that's just asking the server, hey, what's my next animation? And it's just taking a bit of time to get there. There is an idle animation which I will put together, which is in context to that particular usable. And then even if it's not loaded the animation, at least it's doing some sort of a performance that's in context.
Yeah. Basically, instead of, it's not much about loading, but it's deciding what to do next, I think, right? I think this is what probably you meant. And I think, yes, absolutely. I think it's a lot of the stuff is being smart, especially in the social environment where you know that the player is not going around and killing everybody, right? Because they need to react very fast and so on. But I think in the social environment, yes, we need to absolutely be smart on the way we cover up the the time it takes to find something when there are like 1,500 characters active at the same time, that's just a lot for one server, right? This is where I think it's even pretty good for what we have right now. And of course, like, it's still the experience, it's not what we would like that the player would have. There is a bit like more stuff that we are discussing now. I mean, first, Mars is probably absolutely right when he says, like, I mean, we do a lot of performance capture right now every time, and we see where is the biggest bang for the buck as well, because sometimes I think AI in itself is definitely not that expensive, but it's everything that comes with the character, right? That is animation, updating animation, rendering, all the calculation for, I don't know, if they're piloting a ship with all the items and stuff like this. So AI is, at the end of the day, it's the end of the, at the end of all the chains of all the features. So to have good AI, you need to have everything else that works. I think one thing is definitely like, the synchronization as well that we are looking at, so that we try to fix bugs. Sometimes I know people feel like, oh, this is what happens on the game, but I think it might be different. Some of these bugs are related to the fact that you see on the client something different than what happens on the server. And like recently we fixed a lot of those bugs where, for example, there was a problem with the lower body turning, and the fact that the lower body was not turning on the server. You would see a character fighting that he was not looking at you. In the server, he was trying, but it was not turning, and that information was not arriving to the client. So you feel like, oh, the AI is not responding to me because it's not shooting. But it's not shooting because it's not pointing you the gun because he can't. And on the way, the client, it doesn't even look, he's even trying, right? So I think you have some type of this discrepancy on experience these are the bugs that we absolutely are looking at right now. We don't really need to have any change from server mesh or persistence or any other type of dependency. I mean, it's time, as you said. Sometimes you need to just pick with the balance. But there are other things that I think we want to do. For example, in last year, at the end of the last year, the things that we changed is the way we give priority to some of the calculation. So we give calculation to the combat more than the social, and to some things at the social a bit above the combat. And I was finishing to experiment with some other ways of give priority with different LODs, and these are stuff that we have. We have already a 2-version LODs on behaviors and movement and stuff like this, but we don't have yet like, for example, one thing we want to do is a nice way of balancing importance of the request based on the LOD you are, and if you switch LOD, right? If the player moves around and fights with, let's say with Andrew, right? And Dan is super far. Maybe he was close to me, but I left him, right? So if now it takes a little bit of more time for him to find a new cover spot, I prefer that Andrew's cover spot is quicker to give to him. And we try to be very careful as well. We have a really limited set of raycasts we do every frame, right? Or a very limited set of amount of queries that we do. And some of the low system that this query system use, we are trying to optimize as well. Like the usable queries, we are right now working on making them faster. If that becomes faster, you can run quicker queries, right? So
there's a couple things you can still do. And will the more global things like server meshing or anything, will that help AI at all?
Absolutely, because I think the best thing that we reduce the workload on the servers, right? And I think as a lot of people report, when we read what's the report of, of Reddit or everywhere, it's like you can feel that there is a very good experience from people also when the servers are fresh, right? And there are not a lot of systems or a lot of locations enabled. So I think this is why we are really pushing through this technology that is the server mesh, because we know by a fact that if you run more servers with less workload, the experience is closer to what regular games do right now.
Just to talk about briefly about our kind of frustrations as well, is like we could make a thing and we'll test it in single player and it'll work great. We could test it again in a local server on our machine and it'll still work great. But then you send that out to the PU and a week or two later you get a bug back saying it doesn't work in the PU. It's like, but it works.
All right, so we are actually out of time, but we're let's do a lightning round here. Let's see if we can squeeze in a couple more questions here. Lightning round, short answers. Fran, I need you to try, man. I need you to try.
I'll shut up then.
Are AI able to use grenades currently?
They are. I think Marius has been working on that some time ago, but I think we want to refresh a little bit that functionality.
Okay. Will there be frustrated animations for NPCs who miss public transport?
Yes.
Okay.
They were fun.
Anything you can tell us about animal NPCs? Fauna.
Every animator wants to work on them.
Just a matter of getting them prioritized, right?
We've definitely got some work coming up shortly for some animal NPCs on Squadron anyway. So hopefully that should feed back into the PU.
Yeah, we have some in general, some stuff also work in progress for fauna, but
Okay. The AI turret blades for spaceships, just to have not like NPCs in them, but computers controlling turrets.
So that is already working. Basically, it's what we call AI modules. I think it's not exposed. I think this is a gameplay, a question to how this is going to be exposed to be,
Right.
to be able to buy them and apply them in your ship. We do have that basically.
It's the tech working when players are facing the pirate Idris and the pirate Javelin and stuff like that. That's how those are.
Yeah, there are, for example, the unmanned turret, what they call unmanned turret, are actually turrets with an AI module attached to it.
So it's just has to be exposed to the player, which is a whole nother series of design and UI and all kinds of stuff, but out of your hands. Will the AI have real feelings?
You got a quick answer.
Told you the Turing test by 2040.
I think there will be like a way in which the AI will express their mood, as we were saying before, like frustration is one, and how this mood will be consistent, right? There is this concept, and of course they will be hurt if you insult them, right?
For your area of expertise, what's the biggest challenge right now? What's your Wapo?
Setup and consistency in setup is quite challenging, especially with a big studio like us, making sure everybody's doing things the same kind of way. Because when you go back to debug something and it's set up entirely different to how it should be, it's another frustration.
You're talking about Stuart, aren't you? I can tell.
No, Stuart's actually really good. He's great.
Anyone else? Biggest challenge in your job?
Getting mocap time, but that's going to be fixed.
For me, is the intertwined systems, right? I think, for example, just the usage. Something I was looking at with Mars, right, was this transit system, and then you need to have a full understanding of how a system works, so that then the AI can also use it in the most consistent way, right? So sometimes you need to have some either dedicated time from another team, and making sure those things are synced, or make your the best of your guesses, on how something works, so you can collect the right questions to use the other team's time, in the most efficient way as possible. And then the fact that sometimes some of the new feature, this might take at least, is like they usually have an impact, right? So it's like you need to do stuff in a way which encapsulate the risky part that might be affected to the minimum, right? So that as soon as something happens, then it's all in that side. For example, the loadouts and the inventory. I mean, we have been talking a lot about the loggers, right? We did an implementation away, which is like they can go in the logger, they can change now as soon as that the inventory right is there and the functionality for the logger we can just replace the little part. Andrew, where's
Andrew?
I was going to say lots of planning meetings, but I think, what I said before, complexity of sometimes complexity of systems, just having to think through everything so you can get stuff right as possible the first time out is, that's probably a big challenge for me.
And Marius?
Challenging, but in a good way, is working on and trying to find solutions for performance. It's something that gives you the best for that situation, especially with limited resources.
All right. Well, that's it. You did it. You survived the hour-long show. Thank you so much, everybody. For those watching at home, remember, Invictus starts today. I think it's probably starting like right now, if I'm not mistaken. Be sure to check out Crusader and all the stuff that Invictus this year has to offer. It'll be changing up every day. Keep an eye out for Drake Defense Con this year, and some of the folks who were around in the EU hours this morning may have gotten a slight unintended preview of something new and very exciting coming at the end of the whole thing. So stay tuned for that. Keep an eye out on the robertsspaceindustries.com website for all the details, including a bunch of different contests and stuff that are going on. Your chance to win all variety of stuff, which I say because I have no idea what you win. That's a whole nother department. And I forgot to ask before I did this because I'm a professional. Come on back to us next week on ISC. We'll be looking at the new cutest vehicle in the First Citizen universe, the Drake Mule, and the arrival of one of the most exciting fighters in recent memory, the RSI Scorpius. And we'll be stepping foot inside our new UK studio for the very first time. So check out that. And then we'll be right back here next Friday for an Invictus launch week, all ships Q&A. We'll have John Crew and members of the vehicle team to answer questions about all the spaceships and vehicles and stuff that are fit to print. That was Stuart. That was Andrew, Dan, Francesco, Marius. Thank you so much for taking the time again to be out of your end of the week. And for those in the chat who spent like a good 10 minutes just debating the nature of frustration. I don't know what to say. I started that thought and I don't know where to take it. Not any place that's not going to get me fired. So I'll just say good night. Take it easy, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
There was literally like 4 people just going back and forth about the nature of frustration in chat for like 15 minutes. I'm just like, oh my gosh.